Today, I'm delighted to welcome Janine Vos, Chief Human Resources Officer at Rabobank, to the Digital HR Leaders podcast. Janine, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to speak with you today. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and the journey that led you to your current role as Chief Human Resources Officer at Rabobank?
Yes, of course. Thank you, David. I studied law. And I became a trainee at a telco and IT company afterwards because I wanted to experience different fields fields of expertise because I didn't know where to end. So I didn't have a sort of career program when I was really young, but I saw a lot of fields. I did strategy, legal, but also retail, marketing, sales. And then I ended up getting to manage 20 telco shops, telco outlets, and there I experienced leadership. And then I saw that what is on paper is actually sometimes totally different when you enter a shop and you feel energy or not. And what the difference people make, I experienced it. And that was sort of, I fell in love with it. And I thought, I want to make a craft out of this. And then, of course, if you think about our field, people say HR is the field to go to. So I did. And so I did different HR jobs. And then I became the CHRO of that telco company. And then Rabobank, which is a cooperative bank in the Netherlands, but also in 36 countries, actually approached me and said, we are going through a big transformation and would you like to lead? So I did. In the first year, I was a CHRO, and then I was appointed in the managing board as of 2017. And I'm loving it. I think people and transformation is what I love doing every day.
That's great, and it's always good to hear. I think that people coming to HR having had experience in other business areas as well, which I imagine helps. And of course, so you've been Chief Human Resources Officer and a member of the Managing Board at Rabobank now for 8 years. It's been quite an 8 years, isn't it, with everything that's been happening in the outside world. You know, whether it's the pandemic, AI, and everything that's happening now, geopolitics. So you've been in this role for those, as I said, those 8 years. I'd love to get your perspective on how you feel that the role of the Chief HR Officer has evolved over that time.
I think it evolved massively. What I like being in the managing board is that I'm not only solely responsible for people, but I'm responsible also for the strategy of the bank. And that actually evolved me as a CHRO. So before I felt as an expert on people or the expert in HR, but giving the whole spectrum of leading this company gave me far more broader experience. So it's more like I evolved as well, but it gave me a better perspective on what's needed for people. And I am, because of everything I hear on a daily basis in terms of what's going on in the world, how does that affect our company? I can better respond in terms of what to do with on the people side. And so COVID, of course, had a massive impact on HR. And I think it made us credible for the ones who really took this change also with data, to be honest, to make it so precise. How do people feel? What do people need currently while being at home? Gave us more a podium to show what if you focus on people, performance gets better as well. And I think that was a defining moment for HR, the COVID time. And again, now with AI and agentic AI coming in, I think it is going to be again a big time of change, and a change for our roles as well, and the impact, but also influence we have on everything which relates to strategy, but also strategic workforce planning. What kind of skills do we need? What is agentic AI? How can we help people actually getting attached to the risks, but also the opportunities and work? We already see work shifting.
And in many respects, during the time that you've been CHRO there at Rabobank, so since 2018, HR has been on HR as a whole, as a profession, has kind of been on the journey. We've seen it, the work we do at Insight 222, from its traditional role as a support function to very much being a strategic partner to the CEO and the board, just as you and the HR function at Rabobank is. How does that make your role, and the role of the HR practitioner not just more important but more challenging? So what are some of the challenges that you're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Well, of course, the challenges now in terms of geopolitics it is a challenging one, because and still the world evolves every day. So maybe what I'm saying now could be, if you hear this podcast, could be completely different, right? But if you think about allies, if you think about data, then for instance, we work, of course, with technology partners. And we thought, of course, about cyber and data, but not in the field like, what if a particular continent is not our friend anymore? What shall we do? How can we work? So relating to, for instance, Microsoft Outlook or Teams, where we work in, or Copilot, who are we engaging with in terms of AI? And where's the data getting to? And could we separate actually Europe from other continents? That is a thing we didn't talk about. And of course, don't even mention DEI, what the world, that is what strategically now is at and in the boardroom. That is the topic. How do we make our people more resilient? That's one topic, and the leaders. But also, how are we more resilient in terms of cyber, in terms of data, but also in terms of geopolitics? Where to bet on in this world, and what is the strategy moving forward for a company? I think that is a daily. That's now a daily task, and I wouldn't have imagined that 8 years ago, but it is now. And balancing those paradoxes, because they are dilemmas and paradoxes, I would say. Balancing that in a day-to-day life, that is the main focus of my job currently. And data helps in finding a balance, because the world is non-linear. And I always thought, well, if you dive into matters, if you trust science, things will be okay. And now in this world, people sometimes don't trust data, or think data is completely different. So the non-linear part is the complex, or adding to complexity, I would say.
No, you're right. The level of uncertainty, I guess, and it's just, particularly in the last few months, it's been very high. And there are surprises that happen most weeks at the moment, which I guess takes up a lot of time for the management board and
Yes.
and you as a CHRO. So as you said, data helps you kind of see through some of that uncertainty and helps you make decisions.
Yes.
So Janine, I think I first came to see you in the leadership team at Rabobank. I think it was in 2018. It might have been 2019. I know it was before the pandemic, and you were obviously quite early in your tenure as a CHRO there. And what really struck me is that even then, you and the HR leadership team, and I know the people analytics function you've got, very data driven. And you're also about to experiment with moving to Agile, and HR was leading the way at Rabobank. Just for the benefit of our listeners, what does being data driven and Agile actually mean in practice for Rabobank, and how does it influence your daily leadership?
Well, my daily leadership, when I, of course, in a telco and IT company where I previously worked, data was already a big topic. And so when I entered into this CHRO role within Rabo, I thought the first thing to appoint in my leadership team of HR is a people analytics officer. I was really focusing on that. I sensed that data would become more and more important, because most of the time our craft or our expertise is seeing as soft side, but I think soft side and hard profit actually is also a paradox, but it is the same. And I thought, what if everything we sense or feel, what if we actually can transfer that with data? And data helps in getting more people who are more on the rational side, getting them involved and seeing that why it is important to focus on the people side. And so I thought banks are in general so concerned with people with a lot of knowledge and intelligence. So talking about feelings is of course, I do not want to say that we don't talk about feelings, but I think balancing both is really important. So you can say, I sense that this part of the organization, it's going into a difficult time. But if I back that up with data on sick leave, if I back that up with data on audit findings, with engagement scan, with culture behavior, with work and data scans, with health scans, then if I transfer all that data, and then my sense making is actually also fact making. And that is what I love about data. Maybe you also see me going forward because I love the fact that what data can do. And then if you talk about data, then you can also talk about what is underneath the data, what is the root cause. Because then people see you are balancing both. You find the evidence, and that is in the data. And so I found it really important that I had a really good people officer, of a people data officer, and I found him working at also an IT company, and I thought he's the one. And every decision I took in the first 2 or 3 years, but still, he's really important in my team, for the whole team. And so if we moved into Agile, and of course Agile was already really well known in the IT part, we wanted to scale that to other departments as well. We wanted to scale that to the total company, and we did. And we did a big transformation in 3 to 4 years that we actually transferred almost every product development department, either on the business side, but also IT, but also supporting functions like risk, finance, and HR into Agile. And that was a journey itself. Because we were daring enough to say we can work Agile within HR, but that was a big transformation. And so to your point, data helped me in the last 8 years. I would say without data, I wouldn't have been appointed in the board.
Yeah, and I know you kindly spoke at our Insight 222 retreat last September, 2024. That is, if people listen to it in a few years' time, in near Amsterdam. And I think the quote that you said was, "People analytics gives the Chief Human Resources Officer credibility with the executive team and the board."
Yes, it does. It does, and it's still to date. It started also with, for instance, COVID. I think we were working from home. The morning we were from home, there was already a pop-up in your screen. How are you today? If you could say one word, what would you need? And so we already had, when we had all signed a sort of emergency calls, we could already back it up by the people are okay, or in this part of the organization, they're not okay. People need this from their leaders. People need this from the organization in terms of devices. We could already do that day one. And we do that still. Every business case we make, every talent or program, whatever, is backed up by numbers.
Yeah, and it's, again, we saw it in other organizations as well, that the companies like yours that were actually asking these questions and providing this information to leaders actually, it opened the eyes in many companies of leaders into the power of people data and how they could use it to drive really important strategic decisions within the company.
Yeah.
And I guess that those companies like Rabobank that were able to do that during the pandemic have kind of benefited from that moving forward in terms of the importance of the role of HR and the CHRO.
And it still helps us on a daily basis. As an example, is that during COVID, everyone was focusing on people because this was a people thing, right? This is a health issue affecting a lot of people. And then after COVID, you see that normality takes on again. And then people are like, yes, but. And if you then show also in terms of hybrid ways of working, for instance, I thought I now have to there's going to be a different time that people feel different about hybrid way of working. There's always, when you have change, there's always a contra. There's also something stepping in or creeping in. And I thought there's going to be that moment. So we need, from moment one, we need data on how is productivity? How do we drive productivity? How is hybrid way of working helping us? Because I felt that if I look at how people really would like organizations to be, and the flexibility and the balance of work life is so important, that is not going to stop. And if we want to attract talent, if we really would like our people to grow, we need hybrid way of working. And so there's always going to be a contra reaction to everything. You see that now in the world, but it's also happening within hybrid way of working. So from moment one, we said we're going to stack up everything with data to actually, when the moment comes and the organization said, well, it's going to be back in the office again, or maybe more days in the office, that we could actually say, if we do that, this will be the response, this will be the attrition rate, this will happen in the organization. And until now, that is effective. You never know. There's always someone trying to prove the other, to prove us wrong. But I think data helps in getting things more factual, because a lot of leaders, and me myself, sometimes you have a feeling and you think the rest of the world has the same feelings, but that's not true. We all live in our bubbles, and with data, you actually see the total picture or the total movie instead of your own picture you have in your mind. That's what I love about data.
Yeah, it takes some of the emotion out of what can be some quite contentious decisions sometimes, because people have strong beliefs, don't they, one way or another, and data helps us maybe get to a compromise, which is the right decision for the company. Yes. And the right decision for the employees.
And it's depending on your company. Maybe it is necessary, but then you should know the risk attached to your decision. And that is what data makes it less, like you said, less emotional. And you can also, with data, foresee the future more. And that in this current time, you need that. And we don't have, like, we cannot have a look into the future, because that would be, that will make no sense, because we don't know. But hold on to the things you know, and show those data to actually get more fair better decision making.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, if we can show that actually enhancing employee experience and driving a positive, healthy, thriving culture actually has a positive impact on business results, yes, then that's a really good thing for us to be doing as HR professionals.
Yes, completely agree. Because if you look at every company, or almost every company, has only two main things. That's the customer journey and the employee journey. And so I do not see HR as a solely sort of function. I see HR as managing the employee experience. And I think it was 2018 or 2019 when we started going into Agile as so multidisciplinary teams as HR as well. So with IT, with comms, with facility, and HR together, working together. That was for me the first time when I thought, this is the employee experience. We should not manage HR as a function. We should see it as the people domain. So how could you influence a better employee journey? So part of my team is also the devices, your mobiles, your laptops, the platforms you work on, like Microsoft, Workday. It's in our remit. So what kind of devices people work with, until talent, leadership. It's the broader perspective, and that's what I like, including how buildings look like. If we think about hybrid way of working, then buildings should be feeling like home. You should want to attract people going into the office instead of saying you should. Because what are you doing then in the office? It's different than working with a headset on your laptop. It should be different. And so designing 20 macro journeys like we have, 5 managers journeys, that is what HR is currently about. And with data, not KPIs, but KVIs, so key value indicators, we look at how do employees experience when they come into the office, but also when they first join or when they leave. That is all a journey. So we look at it from an end-to-end perspective, and that is what Agile way of working brought us actually. And the future is going not only into Agile, but actually moving every team into a macro journey. But that is the future. And data underpins some of the decisions we have. And we can show also in the board, how are we doing on all those macro levels? Do people like working, and what do they think should be improved? That is what data helps us.
No, an excellent, Janine, because you've gone far beyond where most companies are still, unfortunately, fixated with where people work. You're actually looking at how people work and how work has changed when you come into an office,
Yes.
and obviously looking at the facilities, looking at design of the workspace, and actually measuring the impact of that on employee experience at different stages of the journey, but also on productivity and business performance as well. And it's so important that, as you said, with those agile teams working together, where you've got people from multiple functions working together to solve a common problem, then you're going to get more collaboration. You're going to get more focus on the rounded part of what you're trying to achieve, rather than just the silo mentality that maybe we've had in the past.
Completely agree, and it is so nice because it comes to the nitty-gritty details as well. For instance, if you come into the office, I'm not currently in the office, but if you come into our offices now, if you go into a meeting room, you see that the meeting room is different. It feels more like warmly, like more at home. But the screens, for instance, IT is showing the behavior sheets. So it has information and data on how many, what is effective, what are effective meetings? How do they comprise of not more than 8 people? They have a clear agenda. So you see that even if you enter a room, you see that it's the combination between people and performance. And so that is the vision we try to get down, not only from the strategy, but also into the daily moments of work. And that is, if you combine IT with HR, you get a lot of creativity on that side. It's not easy. And I must say, it took me far longer than I ever envisioned it would take. But we're getting there step by step, and progress over perfection, I would say, but it helps. It helps getting different silos working together.
You've given a very powerful example of how working in a more agile way, probably makes the HR role more interesting, but also actually has a positive impact on the business and the employees. But for listeners that maybe haven't moved to agile yet, or are struggling to move to agile in HR, how have you handled that transformation internally, and what's been your experience leading the previous, the HR function through that mind shift and behavior change?
Yes, and it's easy talking about it now, but if I reflect on that period, I think I had a clear why, because I saw it being really effective in the customer side of the organization. So I saw the customer journey, that not handling everything in silos. I thought it's the same as an employee. If you enter a building, you don't want to go to one office to get your laptop, the other office to have a setup of your security, a contract from a different department. You don't want that. You want it to be seamless, and you want it to be easy. And we're not at that stage, right? But thinking from that concept, I think I was really clear on the employees deserve us being better on the employee experience. And people are employees themselves. So what you face on a daily basis, others do too. And I made some pictures. For instance, if it was the first of the month, we had long lines of new colleagues joining. They had to come to security first. And I made pictures, or my team and myself, we made pictures of things in the employee journey, which gave them like, yes, this is what we all want. So the why was really clear. And I think the role modeling of me saying that this is not easy, it's change, it's something different, but I truly believe that we do not only want a great place to work, we want a great place to be, where people belong, where people can be their best selves. That is the vision, and I'm struggling with that as well. So I think that is what was really clear. And then we said we got to do things different. So you need reinforcement mechanisms. So we shuffled everyone. We said everyone gets a chance to get into Agile. So we're all not there yet, but everyone gets a chance. So we made squads, multidisciplinary squads, and we just formed them around a theme like performance management, like talent management or leadership. And then someone from people data was joining, and that was from the chapters, from culture, science, behavioral science, a product owner, an IT or architecture if that was necessary, marketing comms, facilities. So they were working in multidisciplinary squads. So we really made a change. And then, of course, a lot of training and a lot of insights into that. And what I've learned is that I should have been more precise from the start what I really expect from people in terms of their growth. And also, maybe I was too long on we were going to make this happen. And some product owners really stepped up, and they are now perfect product owners who could actually also switch towards business. Some did already, because it is similar, right? Managing a product for HR or people and managing a product for customers. So that is a benefit, I think, that people felt like, wow, we're actually transferable. We are growing. We now understand IT better. We understand data better. But to be frank, I should have been more clear to some people, like you will never get into a really great role of being a product owner. So I should have had more courageous conversations at the start with some people. But that's always looking hindsight. Where we're currently at, I'm really happy seeing the growth of so many people and actually getting into better results if you think about how people experience our employee journeys. We came from I think it was a 3.2, and we're currently on a 4.2 on a scale of 5. Not every employee experience, of course, but some we say we do not go for a 5, we go for a 3. So to be clear, that was also because I always like perfection, but in some employee journeys, you should just say that's also Agile, prioritize. Yeah. So maybe on your laptop, maybe a 3 is okay. Maybe not if you're an IT engineer. So for IT, it should be a 5, but maybe a 3, or your mobile phone. That kind of things, Agile learned me a lot of things on priority setting and clear goal setting, definitions of done, and also within HR. And also the culture change. Some people liked it from the HR function to get more in-depth knowledge on IT and data. Some still don't. They struggle. And that's also an honest thing. The IT people actually like it. They like it to be in a multidisciplinary team. And they said things opened up like behavioral science. We never thought this is the way people behave. That's interesting. So you see also from the IT side, they also said we chose for IT because things are more linear, and now we're getting into squads with HR people, and we see that things are not linear, and it's nice to from both sides to get more in-depth knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds from the way you've explained it, Janine, is that all the business professionals that are working in the squads are becoming more rounded business professionals, more skilled in other areas, and then they've got more flexibility to move into other domains within the organization as well, which presumably helps helps you increase internal mobility and retention
Yes.
of key talent.
And also talents from the business who actually are leading squads from a people perspective. So it's from both sides, the mobility and talent management. Yes.
Really good. Gonna go focus a bit more on how having your head of people analytics reporting to you helps, and then we're going to talk about some of the HR skills around data, like storytelling. But
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that one of the first appointments you made to your leadership team when you became Chief Human Resources Officer at Rabobank was your head of people, data, innovation and strategy, Mark Jansen, and he reports directly to you.
Yes.
And now, based on our research at Insight 222, this is still surprisingly not the norm. Our research last year, and we do it every year, showed that 22% of the people that have Mark's role report directly into the CHRO. Now, that's increased from 13% in 2020, so
Yes.
it is moving upwards. What impact has that reporting line had on your strategy, and what do you think other CHROs are missing out on by not having the people analytics leader as a core part of their leadership team?
Yeah, the first time you told me this, and that was at Inside 2022, I was a little bit shocked because I thought it was normal. Because, like I said, if I would not, I am not good enough in terms of data or the really deep knowledge on data. I know what data can do. I know I need it, but I need someone to actually help me. And I know if I want to be successful and my team wants to be successful, and all my team members know that without Mark, we will not be successful or as effective as we could. So for me, when you said that, it was like, wow, really? Yeah, I'm a little bit shocked because Mark, we started to this point, to underpin this point, is we started with the people data, but now behavioral science is also part of the remit of Mark. So the data on the science, the behavioral science part, also innovation, and also people strategy. So it broadened, the scope broadened, because if you look at innovation, if you look at people data, if you see with data actually what is needed in terms of innovation, I cannot even. It's interesting. You hear me like thinking, how could I do it without data and without this role in my team? And also our strategy, our people strategy, it always starts with data and the outside in data from our company, what we see, what are the trends, what are the predictions. Yeah, I would say if anyone who listens, who's a CHRO or an HR director, please appoint a really good one, and you will see the value add.
That might become a quote that we'll use for this episode, Janine. No, it's interesting because in the research that we do at Insight 222, and we look at what makes companies successful at people analytics,
Yes.
and one of the 8 characteristics is about influence and of the people analytics leaders. So that's influence on their influence on the CHRO and
Yes.
the HR leadership, but it's also their influence with the CEO, the CFO, and other members
Yes.
of the leadership board. And we've seen increasingly those companies are combining the role of the head of people analytics, just as you have at Rabobank, with being responsible for people strategy as well, because they go together, don't they?
Together.
And I think
they do.
you mentioned workforce planning as well. I mean, that's another area that seems to go together, particularly now as workforce planning becomes even more important and even more continuous, I would say. So planning, strategy, and analytics together kind of makes sense because you need data for all of those. So yeah, it is really interesting, and I think what you talked at the start about how leadership, being a leader, really attracted you into the kind of leading the people function. And actually, good leaders surround themselves with good people. Sometimes they surround themselves with people that are better at things than they are. Like you said there with data with Mark, and that's an important aspect of being a good CHRO, isn't it? Surrounding yourself with really good people, so it makes the team better and the function more effective.
It does. It does. You need experts, but you also need people who are better than you, because you get yourself down, and less results. On a scale to 1 to 10, you need like people who are really good, or 8 or a 9 or even a 10, to actually have a team, because I am not the people domain. We are together, and you need it. And the team, and that's also nice within a team, that actually people demand more quality. If the quality goes up, that's what I love. Yes.
So when we, again, in the research we do at Insight 222, we look at skills of HR professionals that are important in building a data culture within HR and data literacy, and being able to influence stakeholders is one of them. Being able to pull the insight from a visualization or a chart is another. Being able to develop hypotheses that you can test with analytics is another. But maybe the one that really resonates with people most is storytelling.
Yes.
So we often say that HR needs to become better storytellers with data. I'm just interested for you, Janine. What does good storytelling look like to you?
Yes.
And how do you coach your team to move beyond simply the numbers?
Yes, and this resonates, because a lot of good data people think data talk for itself, but it doesn't. So the great data people combine data and already make a story, or think about the leader. What kind of story would you tell with this data? And that is what Mark, or our people analytics team do. They think of data, think about the business problem or the people problem, and then transfer it to that. The best people do that, because in the managing board, or whatever board, if you want to influence a decision, you need to think about the problem. So it's not data for data, it's data for the problem. And how could you transfer those two? And then you need a story around the data. And sometimes I do not have the time to always think about the story. So it's good that Mark already does the synthesis around the data, and then tell me, this is the 3 things which you must, maybe, or should, or could say around this. This is the essence. And stakeholder management is so important, and that is all around getting the good story across. And data doesn't say anything if you don't have a good story around it. So storytelling, yes, and a lot of people think that is a little bit off their track. They think, I love data, but without a good story, data is nothing. And so to be a good storyteller, I think you must get into the shoes of the people who you're trying to get the story across or influence, and not only think about the problem, but also, how do I get the message across? So get into their shoes, but also feel the emotion yourself, feeling the problem yourself, and what would you do with this data? And sometimes that's not easy, because then I ask people, what should I do with this data? And then people say, well, I looked at the data, but I don't know. This is your job, right? They look at me like, yeah, but this is what you should do. No, what would you do if you would be in my shoes? And then actually people say great things, which you actually can use again in my own setting. So getting the story and talking about it helps. So do not send people charged with data. Have a discussion around it, or already have a storytelling. So it's getting into the shoes of the other, thinking about a story, and it has to strike some emotion with the other party. And especially on sensitive topics, if you really would like this budget, or you like a leadership program, also try to get into the emotion.
As you said, it's providing the narrative, and you can use the data to link that together. It's, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Why is it a problem? What happens if we don't do anything? What have we found? What are the insights we found? As you said, the 3 points maybe that Mark said. what are the recommendations? What do we expect to happen if we do it?
Yeah.
And as you said, know your audience enough that you're using an emotional thread to link that together as well. So you're going to drive, because ultimately what you're trying to do is drive a decision.
Yes.
Isn't it? You're trying to drive a decision and then drive the decision to get to an outcome or a series of outcomes.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily need lots of data to do that.
No.
But the data helps you maybe emphasize a point, drive a decision, and as we talked about earlier, although you're trying to create an emotional thread, it also sometimes takes some of the emotion out, and particularly when you're looking for someone to make a decision which is maybe counterintuitive to their instincts.
Yes, and I see a lot of younger data scientists struggle with that. Like, well, it's already difficult to retrieve all the data and make a sort of summary out of it. Do I really need to make a narrative around this? And the answer is yes. Yes, because you want your data to be not only accurate, but you want people to use your data, and that's something different. It's not that you do a task and just deliver data. No, you deliver a narrative, or you underpin an assumption or a hypothesis. So that is what data is all around. It's the effect you create with the data. It's not the data itself. It's not a sort of hobby of analytical people. No, you're changing the course, the people course of a company. That's what you do.
That's interesting, Janine. We've just released an episode with Dean Carter, who was a CHRO for 25 years. Companies included Sears and Patagonia, and his view was that good storytelling separates the great people analytics leaders from the good people analytics leaders.
Yes.
I might extend that a bit further and say that actually good storytelling separates the good leaders, full stop, HR leaders particularly, from the good HR leaders. It sounds like, because ultimately you've got to get a decision made, and a good story, a captivating, a compelling story will help you to do that.
I agree. And also that what people look in, particularly in this world where it's sort of chaotic, brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible, people need vision, and they need hope, and they need leaders to have better stories, I would even say, going into the future. And data can actually help with that. But because data in this world sometimes is not being trusted anymore, it's not only it's a trust you create with good data and then have a good story around it. It's the perfect combination going forward. We need it in this world. We need good, reliable data. And if you then also have a good story, because people want good stories, they're ready for good stories, for better stories, I would say.
Actually, that's you mentioned the word trust there. One of the challenges that we've had in HR for a number of years is that senior leaders don't necessarily trust the data when it comes from HR, certainly if you compare it to coming from finance. So data helps us increase our influence as HR leaders and professionals. How do you get the trust as well from senior leaders that the insights that you're providing are accurate and are going to drive a positive decision and positive outcome?
Yeah, that was also a journey. I experienced this as well, because in a bank, finance is it's a double whammy, right? Normally you do with CFOs in every company, but in a bank it is the function, so to speak. And so at first they had that. We did not have one platform, so we started working with Workday, I think in 2018. So I knew I had to get one data set, one global data set, because before that I wasn't talking about data until I was sure about the data. And then at first when we came with the data, yes, the finance department sometimes challenged. They said we have different FTE numbers. It doesn't add up in the way our SAP system, for instance, doesn't. So that was at first. And then when they saw that Mark and his team are really knowledgeable, really good craftsmen and women, they started trusting us more. And so do not start when it's perfect, I would say, because perfect doesn't exist.
No.
but start when you feel comfortable. Like I think this is what I could call as good solid data, and then build up again and again the data. And now, for instance, Monday we had a session, and Mark was also came in to tell about for strategy and leadership. And he sat down, and then I have thought it was a proud moment that the CEO turned to Mark and said, "Could you deliver me the data on this, this, and this?" And the CFO and myself, we were sitting next to each other, and we laughed. Wow, that was the first time. So it's not anymore a thing between CFO and CHRO. It's just we trust each other, and if we have questions, we do not put it on the table deliberately like some do in meetings, but we do it just we phone each other and we just say, could we help each other? It's a completely different environment than it was before, because at the start, yes, I experienced that as well, and some people find it really easy to actually say, well, the people data is not good enough. Also, that is a behavior thing, because people think that HR is not good enough in data, and they try to get you off balance by saying so. And so that is also a journey, but now we're at the good end of the journey, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously it's something you've achieved at Rabobank, and presumably the working agile and working in squads with people, HR and finance and people and people data coming together helps because you're building relationships at every level in the organization. Yeah.
Yes, tremendously, and then there's still a lot of work to be done, because, for instance, I now did an AI scan on data in our data hub, and are we ready for the next phase? And then I have an AI officer, and she uses data, and she was really honest and brutal this week, and she said, no, you're on a 2 in a scale of 5, you're at a 2, so HR should be, the CHRO domain should become better, and that I find a challenge itself. So yes, we have a lot of things to work on, but I think the solid basis is there.
So that's the last 3 questions, Janine. Let's look to the future. We'll touch on AI in the question of the series. Actually, if you look, you've been CHRO now for 8 years at Rabobank. If we look 5 years ahead, and I appreciate that's very difficult, and I won't hold you to these, what do you think will define successful HR leadership in 2030?
Oh, define successful HR leadership. We talked about a lot of content, but I would say it starts with me. It starts with reflection. When everything is in turmoil, like it is now, I need to focus on what does this ask from my leadership going forward. The world is changing. People vote different leaders. That does something with leadership. It's also politics are entering into our organizations, and that does something with the people domain and with me. So first, I would say that everyone looks at what does this world where we now live in, it's going to be completely different in 5 years. It starts with me first. So I first have to adapt and change towards what we're currently in. And so working on my own self-reflection, working on my own leadership is what I first need to do. So maybe not a completely answer to your question, but I think it's necessary that we all do that. Look at rebalance again.
Yeah. Reflect, rebalance, and adapt as the world changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what do you think, again, that maybe not looking 5 years ahead, what do you see as the core priorities for HR leaders if they want to remain relevant, in the years ahead? And you can look at the next 12 to 18 months, because it's probably a little bit easier to do that than 5 years.
Well, I think in terms of content, I hope in 5 years we all work around employee journeys. And so there's going to be a movement further, the next phase of Agile, I would say, that is on the content level. And secondly, what I embrace AI, but do it deliberately, because it's gonna, what I now see with agentic AI, they work together. A company called Monica, a Chinese company, already have multiple agentic AI working together. So will in 5 or 10 years we all lead AI agents? Is that what we're entering towards? And I think thinking about those scenarios and what does it mean for in terms of skills for your people, but also how many people do you need in size, and what is the essence of what people need to do in the next phase of AI. I think that in the people domain, we should all think about it now. What are the scenarios and how can we prepare for scenarios? And the third phase, but I think especially in Europe, we need to think about resilience. And that is what I am really busy with in scenario planning. What if something happened in the Baltic states and Article 3 and Article 5 of the NAVO will become effective? Then we will have a completely different scenarios in terms of how do we deal with that? Are we resilient enough as a workforce? Are we resilient enough as a company, as one Europe, I would say, and one Europe plus UK, I would say then. But that kind of thing is the third thing on my mind. The world is shifting, and how do we adapt to that? And that actually trickles down to what should you do with how you work, where you work, with privacy, with data. Where do you get your talent from? Because we now work in a globalized a global organization, and we work with global talent from across the world. And what if that wouldn't be possible towards the future? That kind of things. We work with India. We work, of course, before we had a lot of different, across the world, we work with different groups, different countries. Is that still possible? So the third part is resilience of your people, but also in terms of geopolitics, how will that affect your company? So that are the three things I would say.
Good contingency planning, basically, and scenario planning, as
Yes,
you said. So
yes.
because we don't know what's going to.
Scenario planning, contingency planning. Yes.
We're going to move to the questions of the series, which will be kind of bring AI back into it. And I'll ask you a follow-up, possibly about this as it relates to HR, as it relates to HR itself, the HR operating model. But the question of the series is, how can HR use AI to improve employee experience and well-being?
Employee experience, massively. AI is becoming more human. And so, of course, chatbots, that's the first phase. But AI also in terms of strategic workforce planning. You see it in skills. Already, we had a lot of platforms. We use different platforms. What do you think about skills? But now you see like technology partners actually combining AI and, for instance, so Copilot is integrated in your Microsoft suite. And so I think in a few years' time, it will just be perfectly capable of saying what your skills are and match them with skills within the companies. And so mobility within a company will be done by AI, talent management, coaching. What I see in the contact centers now is that AI is already so good in sensing what is the mood of the customer and then responding to the mood of the customer. He, she does that perfectly already. So it will transform. And I think we as humans are imperfect, and maybe that is what will make us perfect going forward. Because AI is yes, the impact on HR will be massively.
Yeah, and again, early days, but what do you see as the impact on the HR operating model of AI? Because we're starting to see McKinsey publish something earlier this year, which was very thoughtful around how they thought the HR operating model would evolve with AI, and similarly, Volker Jacobs at TI People published something very recently. Again, around how the HR operating model will evolve, which actually was very much based around products, which is, I guess, where you're already kind of moved to at Rabobank?
Yes. Well, the products we already moved to. So I would go from products to experience. That is the next phase I see. And I had a consultant pitching me a zero human company last week. So he said it's possible to go without humans. And for me, that was dystopia, right? But it could be. And then the question is, what do we do with the extra time? How could we do that as society? And then you come into a different, I love that, but that would be another podcast. Think about how could society be, because we are a cooperative bank, and the profit, part of our profit, or the main part of our profit, goes back to society. And so thinking about societal problems, how can we use them? Or if you think about resilience, if you think about how could we do that? How could we, the time we free up? Then on the other side, you have the aim for productivity. So those paradoxes, I love those. But it is interesting to see, what if a zero human company would be accomplished? Wow.
Yeah.
That is a sort of crazy stuff which you only see in movies. Coming back to your operating model, I think also in terms of scenario planning and possibilities, as of from September, we start again. We do every year a cycle with data on what do we see outside in. It's one of the things we start with. What if we become a zero human company? We will never be. But thinking from that perspective, and then that is what we do with the analytical, with the people analytic department, is this kind of provoking thoughts to run them as a team. What is it we humans need to do? And then you come back to become more human. So where AI is becoming more human, and we as society, we had a survey in the Netherlands done where you see that people are really happy on the rational side in terms of, yes, our country, but also in Europe, it is well developed, but we become less and less happy. Is that what we want as society? No. So how could we influence that? What can we do as HR functions to help with becoming more human as humans?
You're right. You're right, Janine. It probably is another podcast, and and maybe one of the questions the CHROs are going to have to deal with is pushing back against business leaders who do want zero humans or few human companies, because, as you said, that could be quite dystopian if we didn't get it right. So
it will become, and what I now see, for instance, in our contact center is we use AI a lot, and people were really happy with, because AI makes your summaries, and before that you should do that in 5 minutes. It does give you tips on what is cross-sell and upsell, and so we see everything is going into the right direction. And then I had an ask from the business. Yes, we see this happening, but you also see that the chatbot is responding to the simple questions. And so the agents are seeing more complex questions ending up on their side of the phone. And on the other end, they have less diversity in their day-to-day tasks. And so they have more complex and more phone calls. If we do not change the way we craft the jobs, and that is the essence, it's becoming more complex and more repetitive. And we thought AI would get rid of the repetitive stuff, and it does, but it does something else as well. And how do we as HR look at job crafting, job functions, creating gigs maybe internally? Well, this is a topic which relates or connects deeply to what I think we can redefine the way we work, but we should be on top of it and not seeing how things evolve, but be on top of it with a lot of data.
Well, Janine, I think we've just
touched the whole world, right?
In the last hour, we've touched the whole world, but I think we've also covered why HR is such an interesting and exciting place, but challenging place maybe to work at the moment. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Digital HR Leaders podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. Can you let listeners know how they can find you on social media and follow all the great work that you're doing at Rabobank?
Oh, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Janine, and my surname is Vos, Vos. So that is on LinkedIn, and you can reach out or ask me a question, of course.
Perfect. Well, Janina, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation. Hope to see you again in person
Yes.
in soon.
Thank you, David. But thank you for being also leading this. Well, I always admire, you were always first with a lot of things, and especially on data. So I really admire what you're doing. Thank you very much.
That's very kind. Thanks, Janina. In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.